All right, hello, and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and yesterday, of course, the big thing that I was saying to watch out for was Nvidia's earnings, and Nvidia managed to absolutely smoke expectations across the board. They also announced a $25 billion share buyback, and of course, the price benefited from this massively. So in yesterday's video, I pointed out we had this base that we were building, and the price was looking like it wanted to emerge from a base. I said that if it was to do that, that would be a classic Mini breakout, and we could expect this to boost the overall prices for the indexes such as the S&P and the Nasdaq. I also said yesterday, one of the only ways I could be wrong in my expectations was if we kind of got a nothing burger and traded sideways out of here. But I said I thought we would see one or two things, either a giant run to 600 plus that happened pretty rapidly, or we would potentially see a meltdown somewhere in this gap fill neighborhood, perhaps as low as 320-ish. As I said yesterday, I was never planning on gambling on longing Nvidia into earnings. I really think this could have gone either way. But I did, of course, point out that I added a long for the Nasdaq, targeting new all-time highs, and the same is true of the S&P 500. So we continue to be long. We have more work to do before I can breathe a sigh of relief, but so far things are looking constructive. Something that is somewhat concerning to me is we're continuing to see trueflation kind of pop up off the lows. Now, it's not a super big deal at the moment. As you can see, we're currently set at 2.7%. Which is below the 3.2 target. So there is still scope to see a print below last month's readout. I keep bringing this chart up and saying, does this or does this not look like it's going sideways, building a base and potentially looking to move higher? If we zoom in on a 1 month chart, you can see over the last couple of weeks, we've gone from a low of 2.09 to a high of 2.69. So we do need to make sure that this is just a counter trend bounce that rolls over. Otherwise, we could be facing some issues in the not too distant future. The CME probabilities currently sit at 86.5% that we will see a pause on the 20th of September. So if we can see pauses, I think that's really bullish. I think it's also bullish, believe it or not, if we continue to see hikes. I don't think markets will care too much about hikes. Whilst if we get a surprise hike and it's not priced in, there will be some readjustment in price, as there always is. For me, it's the cuts that I'm worried about. And that should be no surprise to you if you've been on the channel before. I'm wondering if they are going to be forced to cut rates early, and that is what is going to catalyze a demand destroying event and a credit event. For now though, we're long. We're looking to see if we can follow through a bit so we can breathe a sigh of relief and see if this red squiggle of mine, this drop into the weekly cycle low, can indeed confirm that weekly cycle low and start this run to all-time highs. So far, things look constructive, but experience tells me I certainly don't want to be holding my fists up in the air and declaring victory this early on in the move. Overall though, I'm going to get rid of this. So we'll get rid of the red one, and I think we can target new all-time highs. We're not that far away. From the open today, we are probably only in the neighborhood of 7 or 8% away. So we could certainly see this run. I also wanted to point out whilst we're here in blue is the timing window, right? So right in the middle would be a 60-day cycle low. 6 days either side gives us our 10% tolerance. The lowest low is inside that window. So as long as that low is not taken out, then this silly fractal that seems insane and has got a lot of people thinking I'm mental may just still be in play. Now, am I confident in this at the moment? Not especially, but it would only take a few $1,000 pump here, back above 30, 31, 32, which remember Bitcoin can do in a single candle, for this to change everything and this to suddenly come right back into play. I have been saying, remember, if we were to do anything other than to make a low inside this timing window and then come out of here in a parabola, I will be having to scratch this idea off. But so far, it still looks like this hasn't been invalidated yet. Invalidation would be sweeping this low or trading sideways for another full 60-day cycle. If we were to do anything like that, of course, sweep the low and move down lower, then this is certainly wrong, scratching this one off, saying goodbye to it forever. But right now, Bitcoin is seemingly going to continue to troll me and my hypothesis for a little while longer. The low is inside the window, as you can see. There's no denying that. So this is perfectly considered inside a valid cycle for Bitcoin. And the rules of cycle theory state, so long as we do not breach that low, then the cycle has not failed, and therefore we should expect upwards price action. Only once we've taken out that low can we invalidate this cycle low, call this a failed cycle, and therefore expect the next 60-day cycle to form lower down than this one. So certainly nothing to get excited about just yet, but I also have a very, very hard time being bearish until we take out that low. I have been very consistent in saying all the while we're above the range breakout in yellow, it's still bullish. All the while we're above the prior cycle low, then it's still bullish. And all the while, like I said, we do not invalidate and sweep the current low, then we are still bullish. However, if we're being as objective as possible here, this upward sloping red support line, as you can see, is this breakdown retest before resumption lower? It's too early to tell. It certainly could morph into a bearish look that rolls over like this, right? And then if we lose this and form a cycle low much lower down, things can get pretty ugly pretty quickly. But like I said, all the while we're above this low, all the while we're above the bottom formation range breakout, and all the while we do not invalidate this cycle and have to count this current cycle as a failed cycle, then the last line of defense really before we can actually get bullish is to recover this trend line, or we could indeed break out this downward sloping blue resistance line, something like this, and then we would just have to say the thing is bullish. And no one would have seen it coming, right? No one would have seen it coming. Even I, who had been calling for essentially this the entire way, right? I did not expect a big drop like that. I didn't expect a liquidation cascade, but I did tell you all over and over and over again, we were going to get a cycle low show up inside that window. And despite all of this, even souring my sentiment, even making me think potentially it was a stupid idea to assume that we were going to have this big blow off top, undeniably, for now at least, it's too early to say this is wrong. So I know a lot of people will be quick out there to say, no, it's bearish, 10K comes next, 12K comes next. But objectively speaking, like I said, all the while we're above those key levels of support and the cycle's not failed, then the thing is bullish, okay? So hold the line, let's see what can happen. All I can do is see what the market will give. I've got this nice tweet here from BCB that kind of reiterates this point, so you can hear it from somebody other than me. He says he's all for screaming doom time for Bitcoin should the stock market fall apart, and he expects it will one day. But screaming for the cliche 12K after every pullback is getting very, very old. Until 24/7 breaks, and remember that is the price at this prior cycle low, then we continue to be on pace with 2015. There is no bullish 12K bounce. If that happens, it's over. And this is what I've been saying as well. Remember, the miner floor, it costs on average around 17, 18K to mine a Bitcoin, with even the cheapest miners down around the 8 to 9K region. So what we will see if the price drops to 12K is a massive amount of centralization of Bitcoin. We will see a bunch of miners be forced to close because of how levered they are, because of how much borrowing they do to purchase the equipment and to pay for their overheads. Prices down at the 10 to 12K neighborhood will cause massive centralization of Bitcoin. And ultimately, if this thing becomes centralized, then it's over, right? We already have a bunch of centralized currencies. Why do we need another one, right? What does it really do? If it's controlled and if it can be modified like Ethereum can, Ethereum's been captured absolutely dog water coin now. Do we want to really have that future for Bitcoin? People that are calling for this, I think, don't understand two things. One, they don't understand how to read charts. And two, they don't understand the wider implications for what would happen to Bitcoin in terms of Bitcoin essentially being dead. So if you love freedom, if you have hope for a future, be careful what you wish for in terms of price. As you can see here, 2015 in the red fractal, so far looks very, very similar. If we can continue to hold those key levels I keep mentioning, then this is potentially what comes next. Under the hood, Bitcoin continues to look better and better. The mining difficulty just set a new all-time high. And so mining difficulty is, of course, a function of the number of miners connected to the network. The more miners connect, the more the difficulty has to be adjusted upwards, and the more miners shut off, the more difficulty would have to be adjusted downwards. The reason for this is simple. If a bunch of miners connect and the difficulty stays the same, then of course the additional computational power of the miners will drain all the Bitcoin out of the system very quickly. And of course the inverse is true. So if half the miners switch off now and the difficulty were to stay where it is, then it would take twice as long to find any blocks. The system would be very congested. It would not function. So every 2 weeks approximately, we have to have a difficulty adjustment. And the fact that mining difficulty is now at an all-time high is simply a function of hash rate and security also being at an all-time high. Remember, as hash rate is at all-time high, this speaks to capital investment into the network still continuing at the highest level. On top of that, addresses with at least one Bitcoin have recently hit an all-time high of 1 million and show no signs of slowing down. Check the difference out as well. So large investors bought the rip in 2017. They bought near the top and then ended up selling near the bottom in the bear market. And you can see that reflected in the wallet addresses with one or more Bitcoin. But then they learnt the lesson the hard way, and they did the complete opposite the next time around. They did not buy the top in 2021 and instead have been accumulating furiously through the 2022 bear market. And of course, the biggest news out of all of this is whole coiner addresses are at new all-time highs, which speaks to adoption of the network. And here are some numbers for you that I think are quite staggering. There are 220,000 Bitcoin left to be mined between now and the next halving event as of April next year. So at the current prices, that's only around $5.9 billion. In the subsequent 4 years, there'll be 660k mined between halvings, and that's currently valued at today's price at around 17.5 billion, which gives a 5-year total of 880k Bitcoin to the tune of 23.4 billion. So if you expect more than 23.4 billion in net new capital, which remember equates to just 0.2% of BlackRock's assets under management, to enter Bitcoin over the next 5 years, you should be buying right now. So with Bitcoin's market cap somewhere between 500 and 600 billion, can you see an inflow in the neighborhood of 23.4 billion over the next 5 years? It seems ludicrous to think the miner supply isn't going to get absorbed multiple times over. Remember, there's around 2 million coins on exchanges, but these are being bought up by the day. I often get people ask me, do I think, since I'm calling for new all-time highs, that we're going to see 600 billion in inflows and that will double the market cap? And my response is always the same. Remember, it does not take another $600 billion in inflow to double the market cap, because 75% of the supply is held by long-term holders. The likes of the funds, the institutions, BlackRock and alike, they're going to buy every single coin that is mined. So is the likes of MicroStrategy. So we only have around 2 million coins floating around on all the exchanges combined for everyone else to scramble for. Thus, it takes significantly less than 600 billion to double the market cap of Bitcoin. So starting from the top, here's the S&P. As you know, we got long. We're looking to break this outside red line. And if we can do that, then I expect very good things to happen for the price of the stock market walking forward. The same is true of the NASDAQ. So we are in a little bit of a danger zone right here, because if you look at this yellow line, we have possibly got breakdown, retest, looking for resumption lower. But if we can get above that or even reject here and then break out of the blue one, then again, we can say it's repaired, and therefore I expect bullish price action for the NASDAQ. So I did not feel very good about taking this long going into Nvidia, as I said in yesterday's video, but happy days for now. Long and strong continue to push. Still not broken out on my red line for the Dow, so we'll see. If we can do it, then I'll add the long, respect the breakout. It is what it is. The VIX, I'm still pushing the short, as you can see, gapping down today. So happy days there. Yesterday, I added a Coinbase position. Again, I've been talking about this for how many weeks is this? This is weeks and weeks and weeks of orderly decline. I said, get a breakout there. We'll add a position. I'm going to give it a couple of days to see what happens. And then if we can perhaps get above $82, I will move the stop from under the first position underneath here. MicroStrategy possibly going to make its first repair on this pink line. I would rather wait for the red line, although this could perhaps be a trade from me. Same deal for Riot. We've got a pink line of repair, which would be an early entry, or I think I'm going to wait until we get to a later entry on the red line and play the more statistically likely outcome here for Riot. So we'll see how it goes. And Marathon kind of looks like it wants to bounce off support and break out. Now, if Marathon breaks out here, I will add this long and put the stop just below the local swing. Again, none of this should be a surprise if you've been here. I've been talking about this over and over and over again, but I have indeed added Coinbase as of yesterday. Gold looks to have confirmed a cycle low, so happy days there. Silver is benefiting, as you can see. So again, not much more to say about that apart from long and strong continue to push. Keeping a close eye on the miners, as you can see, right into trendline resistance. So if we can break out, I think this can be a long. Same is true of the junior miners. So we got that breakout. I will be looking for retest today, and then I think we can go again. Pretty much already covered Bitcoin, but of course we want to see this line recovered, this red one, or failing that, we at least want to hold the levels that I've stated a bunch of times on the channel already today. So something like this, and we can add a long. I think it's too early to attack at this point. Like I said, you know the levels, right? I've mentioned them a bunch of times. Is the dollar going to roll over, or is it going to break out? That's to be determined. Maybe this is going to wait for a catalyst out of Friday's Jackson Hole, and we'll see a direction one way or the other. I would say, given where the cycles are for everything else, the most likely outcome is this blue squiggle where we roll over from here. But we could certainly have some kind of deviation first. So that's it from me. All we can really do is continue to take it one day at a time, as I say over and over again. But what else am I supposed to do, right? I could make wild, bold, sweeping predictions, but then it's just some of them are going to come true and some of them aren't. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I say that all the time. The only thing I know is that I don't know. So all I can do is take it one day at a time. But so far, the primary expectations seem to be holding. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens to Bitcoin over the weekend, whether or not it gets shorted into oblivion or whether or not we start to get really bullish. The equity markets and those crypto related equities are starting to show relative strength. And usually that's a biomarker, isn't it? It's usually a biomarker for bullish price action out of Bitcoin. Overall, I would say things are looking up. The closes will be important. If we can close bullish this week, then happy days. And I think we could possibly breathe a sigh of relief into next week. As I'm sure you already know, but just in case you didn't, I'm getting married next week. So on Wednesday and Thursday, I've got a couple of videos. One's a cycle tutorial and one is a bit of an outside the box kind of entertainment video. So I'm going to do my best to get daily content out. But if I don't manage to get daily content out every day of next week, then please just keep in mind that it's only because I'll be with the family, etc. So anyway, in the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.